Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and we are going to dive into some nutrition today. I know it's really important, particularly, there's New Year's resolutions all about how to stay healthy. And so it's a great topic. We're going to learn about decoding nutrition labels. I have Marian here today. She is a PhD with the University of Arizona Nutritional Sciences. I know that that title is actually even longer than what I just said, Mary. So you can give the rest of the background for me. But Mary also helps us with our nutrition counseling that we provide over here at TMC for Seniors. So welcome, Mary. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you, and welcome to everybody who's online and the people in the room as well. I appreciate your interest in the topic, and I'm just a faculty member at the U of A, and um, I teach mostly medical nutrition focused classes. I help students try to figure out how to work with clients and patients when they have to keep them healthy and then to help them manage disease if they have any conditions.
So it's really important to be able to do that, right? And so getting our students to learn, how to help the public with anything that they have that might be nutritional that relates to their medical diagnosis is super important. I want to go ahead and put your PowerPoint up. If you have questions for Mary as she's going through this, please feel free to leave them in the chat, and we'll answer any questions in person at the end of the presentation. So please, Mary, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Maya, and welcome everybody again. I can't see people online, and I don't know if you get to say anything right now, but how many people already read nutrition labels? Okay, a couple people do. Does anybody want to share with me why you think it's important or of interest to look at nutrition labels? Yes.
I personally look for preservatives.
Okay, so looking for preservatives. Okay, trying to avoid preservatives in foods.
Calories, and just if I think it's a healthy product or something that's just got enhanced taste and color to attract people
Okay.
for no nutritional value.
Okay, so trying to determine if there's preservatives in there, what the calories might look like, if it's a healthy product in general. Okay. Anybody else?
Sugars and trans fats.
Sugars and trans fats, that's important as well. Okay, well, those are some of the big reasons why labels are on food, is to help consumers actually look at a product, determine if it's the best product for them, and then help them choose between different products. I don't know how many people in society actually read food labels. I've seen more people, I think, in the grocery store kind of checking things out a little bit, but in today's hurry up society, a lot of people don't. They just grab things. And that's why it's important to know how to discern information on the label. And I brought some examples, as well as I'm going to talk about or show you some in the PowerPoint presentation here. So everything that was mentioned, ingredients is important. The food labels can tell you about trans fats, fats in general, calories, and I would say also importantly, serving size. What is considered in serving size? And we're going to talk a little bit about that because that's kind of been morphing as well. So when we look at labels, if we just kind of peruse the facts here, we can see that there's a serving size at the top. So this is 1 cup is a serving size. But then importantly, when you're looking at a package, so let's just say you can see I have a can of stewed tomatoes here. And if I'm looking at this and I'm super hungry, I could say, oh, well, I'm just going to have this for lunch along with something else. So I'm thinking it's going to be a 1 serving. But in this situation, you can see on this label that there's actually 2 servings in their container. And when we come back to my stewed tomatoes, I'll tell you how many servings they've determined are in that can. So then here's the information that we talked about, calories. So you can see for 1 serving, there's 250 calories. And then they give you information about fats. So you can see there's 110 calories, a little less than the total calories, and then here we have information about fat. So what do we know about fat today? Should we all have some fat in our diet? Yes, fat is satiating, makes food taste better. Our body needs fat because there's lots of enzymatic processes in our body that require fat in synthesizing things. In our cells, our cell membrane is made of fat. We need to have some fat in our diet. But the quality of the fat is what's important. So this label you can see just has the saturated fats on it. It has cholesterol, and other brands will have the trans fat on it. And so everybody probably knows that saturated fat and trans fats are the guys that aren't so good for us. And this label doesn't have the monounsaturated or polyunsaturated, which are the healthy types of fat. What I find useful when I look at the fat is not only is this product pretty high in fat, so for one serving, I'm getting 12 grams of fat. And you're thinking, okay, well, that maybe sounds kind of high. And as a dietitian, I know that we have a range of what percent of our calories can come from fat. And it's quite wide. It's from 10% to 35% of our total calories can come from fat. So if I'm a male and I'm following a 2,000 calorie diet, which is the daily value diet, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, I get 66 grams of fat a day. So if I'm looking at the saturated fat, I'm like, oh, I get 66 total. This is 12 for one serving. If I stick to one serving, maybe I'm okay, right? But then we have to also parcel that 66 grams out into healthy fats, so poly, mono, and then saturated fat. And usually we really don't want people to get any trans fats. But trans fats come in lots of different processed foods, so sometimes you're going to get some. But saturated fat, there is a lid on what percent you should get from your diet. And as we get older, the percent of total calories goes down. And our total calories in general go down as we get older. How many is actually what we need per day? So for men, most men need 20 grams of saturated fat is a good amount to stay at or below to decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease. And for women, it's like 15 grams. So you can see that this 12 grams for one serving contributes significantly to those two goals that we should try to stay under. And so that's important information when I personally am looking at this label, is that I go, okay, I get 12 grams here, and then saturated fat is 3 grams. So I'm like, okay, well, I only get 15 today, and this is giving me 3. How's that look for the rest of my day? And that's the thing that we have to remember when we're looking at food labels. What are we doing all day long versus just this one product? Okay, so sodium, 470 milligrams. Do we think that's a lot of sodium? Yes. People in the room are shaking their head. Yes. What is our goal as far as upper limit, as far as how much sodium we should be consuming a day? We should be at this number or less. So we really should be less than 2,400 milligrams. If you have hypertension, you have heart disease, you have chronic kidney disease, you really should be at 1,500 milligrams. So there's 1,500 milligrams sounds like a lot. But when I'm looking at a product like this and I only get one serving of whatever this is, that could be a lot of sodium. So again, you have to put in context, like today when I came in, it was kind of drizzling on. And I'm thinking on rainy days, people like to have soup for lunch, right? So soup tends to be high in sodium unless you get the low sodium kind. I would never get the low sodium kind because I want food that tastes good. But so in my context of 2,400 milligrams a day, this can fit as long as I'm doing low sodium here and low sodium there. I'm not buying low sodium products, but I'm just not eating a lot of products that have salt in them. So let's add another thing to the picture here. I brought some breakfast cereal. This is Quaker Oats Oatmeal Squared. Let's say I was to have this for breakfast on top of my soup. So this has 190 milligrams of sodium in there. So if I were to add that, let's just say 200, I'm at 670. Am I still doing pretty good on my sodium intake? Yeah, for my 2400, I'm fourth of the way there. So I'm not, whoa, sorry about that. I'm not so worried about this sodium, except if I'm just a high sodium intake person all day long. Then this is just contributing to the bottom line. Total cholesterol, or cholesterol, I don't worry about cholesterol. When we think of heart disease and we think of lipid levels and what increases our risk, and we think about LDL levels, saturated fat's more important than cholesterol. So, the fact that it's on there, that's great, but I don't pay any attention to that. Okay, so carbs. We know that we've become a carb-phobic society nowadays, and this gives you information about, okay, what's the total amount of carbs? Again, I don't so much worry about that as how much fiber is in it and how much sugar is in it. And so in this situation, we have 0 fiber. So out of my 31 grams of carbohydrates, I'm not really getting any good quality carbohydrates in this situation. 5 grams of sugar, that's not too bad. That's a little bit over a teaspoon of sugar. But when I look at 1 cup of whatever this is, 1 teaspoon might be pretty low. 1 teaspoon might be, why are you putting a teaspoon of sugar in macaroni and cheese? So you have to put it in context with what the product is. Protein is super important as well. So 5 grams for a cup. Again, depending on what it is, if it was milk, I would think milk is usually 8 grams, which is a pretty decent amount of protein for a cup. But if I'm thinking about almond milk, you only get 1 gram of protein for a cup of almond milk. So you can see that there's a huge difference in protein based on the portion size for different products. And then they have some micronutrients, and these are, I'm going to say these were required to be on all labels. Some labels, like my breakfast cereal here, if I look at this, I don't know that you guys online can see, but down here is a whole bunch of other vitamins that are in my cereal. But these are required to be on the label, and then the manufacturer can choose whether they want to tell you how much thiamine is in there, how much folate's in there, etc. So it's good to look at other areas of the label so that you can see if you're getting more benefits for your money, so to speak, than just this little box here. Okay, daily value. I'll come back to that. So when we look at where these numbers come from here and here, they decided, I think this was in the 70s, that most Americans needed 2,000 calories a day. Today, I would say that definitely is not true because most people are not moving like they were in the 70s. So the fact that we still have this daily value on the label based on this, I feel like it really doesn't give us a whole lot of information. But as the consumer, it does give you guys some information. As a dietitian, I would be looking more at, have you guys heard of the RDAs, the recommended daily allowance for vitamins and minerals? That's what I look at because that's more relevant in terms of what you should be striving for daily. So a good example is women who are postmenopausal, your RDA is 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. Now the daily value is 1,000 milligrams a day. So it's not applicable to everybody when you're looking at this and thinking, oh, well, that's a pretty good percentile if your requirement is a lot higher than what the daily value is. So I just think this is really arbitrary, this information based on the daily value. But again, it gives you some sense of what the percents look like. Can you tell if it's high? Can you tell if it's low? Or is it just kind of bright? Okay, so highs and lows. If we're looking at our label here, we can see that calories, again, calories are meaningful in the grand scheme of things, but portion size really is more important. So if you think about in our package here, our portion size is 1 cup if we stick to 1 serving. Now, can you guys envision what a cup looks like when you're reading a label that it says the serving size is a cup? Sort of, maybe. Okay, I brought a cup today. This is a cup. So this looks like our standard measuring cup, right? But we don't walk around the store with this. So an easy way is your fist. And for women, this is a cup. Most women anyways. And so if you're looking at something like this and you're thinking, okay, maybe it's macaroni and cheese. If I'm thinking a cup of macaroni and cheese and I'm putting it with something else, like I'm having some chicken, then this may seem like a decent sized serving. But I don't know how many people actually think about how many calories that they're getting for the serving size. But this is critical information. And I think this is why we have such a problem in our country of people being overweight or obese, is because they just look at the calories and they think that that's the serving for the whole package. And they don't look at what is the real serving size. If I'm looking at this, again, saturated fat is pretty low. That's not too bad, 3 grams. The sodium we talked about was pretty high. The dietary fiber, well, obviously there's 0, so it's pretty negligible. And as far as sugar, 5 grams, like I said, that's a smidge over a teaspoon. So the problem with that is you don't know if it's part of the package, the way the food is just normally grown, or is it added? And we'll come back to how do we figure that out. And then, like I said, we want to focus on, so I don't worry about vitamin A so much anymore. This is from back in the day when we used to have a higher amount of people that were vitamin A deficient. It's not as much of a problem anymore. Same with vitamin C. Most people tend to be fairly close on what they need for vitamin C, which is about 75 milligrams a day for women and 90 for men. But calcium and iron are still a little challenging for people to get. And I'll come back to how do you interpret these. So when we look at the high values, we can dissect what's going on with this product. So when we look at, oh, it's high in fat, but we looked at saturated fat. As I said, I'm not so much worried about the 12 grams. Sodium. And so these may not be the things that we want to be focusing on, but it's a good source of calcium. So that could be a checkbox in the right column as far as, okay, well, this isn't a terrible product. Somebody mentioned that we would be trying to decide if this was a better product to buy. And then these guys are kind of low, but as I said, especially for people over the age of 51, we don't need that much iron in our diet. So the fact that this is 4%, so 4%, probably 18, it has a couple milligrams of iron in it. For us, we don't need to worry about that. So the fact that it's low in these, I'm not going to worry about. But again, dietary fiber, I already talked about that. There's none in there, so that's not a helpful thing. Okay, so in 2020, you can see they updated the food label. It was supposed to come out, I think in 2016, but it just got delayed. Of course, food manufacturers were fighting as far as making changes in the label. So what do you guys think? Do you think the changes that you see there, so they bolded the serving size, they bolded the calories, they bolded the sodium and the fat and the carbs, do you think those were meaningful changes? Are people really going to be paying more attention to what a serving size is and what you get for your money? Hopefully that just jumps out at you a little bit more, is that this is not for the whole package, that this is per serving. And oh, by the way, there's 8 servings in this package. And so if I'm looking at a package like this big and there's 8 servings in here, that's a lot of calories for one serving, right? So hopefully it does help people realize they should have bolded this. And I think they should have put this in the biggest font available on the label so that people realize that this is not like a single serving kind of deal. And then the fat, I think most people are tuned in today that trans fat is not so good for us. But on the label, they can say 0 grams trans fat and still have some trans fat in the product. As long as it's less than 1 gram, you can have some trans fat in the product. And when we look at the ingredients, we'll spec out where do you find the trans fat in there if there's any. And so again, total fat, well, that's good to know that there's 8 grams in there and it's 10% of the product. That's not too bad. Total carbs, again, we've become a carb-focused society, so 13%. Most people probably have no idea how many grams of carbs a day they should have, unless they're on a low-carb diet, which typically is defined as 20 grams per day. And so they're probably not going to be buying this product. And then sodium is pretty good. That's a low sodium product, and this is a nice product. It has 4 grams of fiber in it, so we kind of like that. The problem is we don't know what kind of fiber it is, and in the consumer world, it probably doesn't matter as much as knowing that there's soluble and insoluble fiber, and soluble fiber has, I think, better benefits, but we can't tell from this product how the fiber's spliced out there. When we look at the sugars, so this used to be on the label, as I showed you before, 12 grams of sugar, but importantly now, they are required to add how many grams of added sugar is in this product. So you can see out of a total of 12 grams, 3 teaspoons, that most of it is added sugar. So there's what I would say is a fair amount of sugar in this product. So anybody know how many teaspoons of sugar or grams of sugar is okay for women to have per day if it's added sugar to our diet?
20 grams.
You're close, 24.
Okay.
We get 6 teaspoons of added sugar. And for men, do you have any idea what it would be for men? It's 9 teaspoons. So it's about 36 grams. So and this comes from the American Heart Association. So this is kind of what I use as when I'm educating people. Okay, you can have some sugar in your diet, and this is the allowance that you get. And so just think about how that fits in on a daily basis. Some people gives them permission to have something sweet every single day, which could be an okay thing, or it could be the slippery slope where it starts you going once you have something sweet in your mouth, and then you can't stick to limiting yourself to 24 grams a day. Okay, so it's also highlighted in protein. And anybody notice anything? Is calcium still in there? They took 2 things away and they added 2 things. Potassium, exactly. They added potassium, and what else did they add? Vitamin D, exactly. So they took away vitamin A and vitamin C. Remember, I said most people do a fairly decent job on getting those. People do not do a decent job on getting calcium, vitamin D, or potassium. So why are we worried about calcium and vitamin D? Bone health. But in actuality, they found that there's vitamin D receptors on a lot of cells in the body. And so basically, it probably is important in more than just bone health, cardiac health, kidney health, nerve function, etc. Same with calcium. We think of calcium for bone health, right? But calcium is required for your heart to work, for nerve function. It decreases the risk of colon cancer. It might decrease the risk of breast cancer. Men do have to worry about getting too much calcium in their diet because it increases the risk of prostate cancer. So how do you translate? Oh, this one's translated. This one has 260 milligrams of calcium in it. So in the scheme of things, if I'm going to 1,200 milligrams as a goal a day, that's not too bad. It's a good bump to get me there. Vitamin D, there's no way that most of us are ever going to get enough vitamin D from our diet unless we take a supplement. And this time of year, the sun is not strong enough, even if you were outside for 10, 15 minutes between 10 and 2, for our bodies to make vitamin D. If you have any dysfunction of your liver or your kidney, you also can't change the sunlight vitamin D that we make into an active form. So most people should be taking a vitamin D supplement. I think this is helpful. I just don't know how meaningful it is, just because for us to get 1,000 IU's vitamin D a day, you'd have to drink like 5 glasses of milk. Does anybody do that in the room? No. Okay, so getting to the ingredients, as someone in the room mentioned, they look for preservatives. So here's our ingredients list. This one is pretty long. The longer it is, the more stuff that's in there. Now, sometimes that's not necessarily a terrible thing. So if they add a lot of vitamins and minerals to the product, then the list can be really quite long because they have to add everything that's in there. Starting with the first ingredient, that's the one that's the highest amount in, and then the more it goes down, then you get less and less and less. So this product, this label, we can see that it has whole wheat in it. It has, wheat flour. What is wheat flour? Hopefully that's adding more good quality fiber to the product. We don't have the fiber. 25 grams of fiber. That's obviously huge. That's really good, but I don't have the portion size on there. And then we look at it has some salt in it, so we would want to check how much sodium's in it. It has spices. What kind of spices? Doesn't tell us. Also has rice flour. It has some whey in there. It has cornstarch. It has baking soda. It has some baking powder, so I'm not worried about those things. And it has beet powder. Maybe that's for color. Paprika, that's also color. Calcium sulfate, that's probably the calcium on the label. Dehydrated eggs. So the biggest things I would worry about on this is, and it's way down at the bottom, this caramel coloring. It's been determined that that can be considered a carcinogenic. So I try to not buy any products that have caramel coloring in them. Sometimes you can't get away from them at all. Yeah.
What is sodium aluminum phosphate? That doesn't sound very healthy.
Well, that's another flavor agent that they use, and also for shelf life, extending shelf life. But you're right. I mean, those are things that you have to look at and see, do I want to even buy a product with this in it? And it's probably like just such a smidge in there. And if you think about, you're going to eat a serving size maybe on different days. But yeah, that goes into the decision making. Anything that sounds really chemically, many times it's going to be for as a preservative to extend shelf life and make it last longer. It could be for flavor as well. And you just have to decide, compared to something else better available. Like if you shop at Trader Joe's and Sprouts, I feel like they have better options. Of course, Whole Foods probably does as well, but not always. I mean, that's why you have to really look at the label and see what's in there. If, of course, our label here doesn't have any processed trans fats in there, but if it's partially hydrogenated anything or shortening, then there's probably some trans fat in that product. And again, if it doesn't show up on the label, if it says 0 in there, you're getting such a minuscule amount of it that it's probably not detrimental, versus something like if you get popcorn when you go to the movies and they slather that butter all over it, then you're probably going to get at least 4 or 5 grams. Of course, it depends on your portion size too. Now, I thought this was really interesting. I'd be interested to see what you think about this change as well. They decided to change the definition of some serving sizes. So you can see that they changed, this is ice cream. So they changed the serving size from a 200 calorie serving size, or one serving would give you 200 calories, to now 270 calories is considered one serving. Does anybody think that was a beneficial change? And the reason they did this was to make the servings more realistic to mirror what people actually eat. What do you guys think that gives the normal consumer? What do they think when they see that?
If you need more.
Right. Is this a good thing to go from 200 to 270 calories?
It's realistic.
It's realistic, but I'm not sure it's educational. I guess I'm always in the education mode and think, with 70% of the adults in our country obese or overweight, why are we increasing the portion size that you get? I don't get it. If I'm going to go and have some ice cream, I don't really care about this because I have ice cream maybe once a month. I'm just not a big ice cream eater. And I'm going to go to Dairy Queen and I'm going to get my Blizzard with all the bad stuff in it. So I'm going to really enjoy. But people that have ice cream every single night, they can now say, oh, wow, now if I'm looking at the top of the label and it says one serving is, what is it? It doesn't have the cup size. So this is probably, depending on your ice cream too. I'm going to say this is maybe a cup of ice cream, which, this might look like a lot to you, or this might not look like hardly any ice cream to you. I suppose it depends on what kind of bowl you put it in. And then most people probably get the container out of the fridge, right? And just stand there and eat out of it. So then they're not worried about the portion size at all. But when I learned this in 2020, wasn't that long ago. So I just learned this last summer. I'm like, what are we doing? I can't even imagine that we're changing serving sizes just to reflect what people are doing. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. I don't know, maybe I'm too hardcore on trying to get people to think about what they're doing. Okay, so I have a test your knowledge or a little quiz question for you guys. If you go to the store and you look at a packaged chicken, do you guys think hormones are allowed to be added to chicken as they're being raised? No, they are not allowed to be used in chickens or in pork. They are allowed to be used in beef, but the beef, they have to have like a withdrawal process so that there's like very little, if no residual. So why I brought this up is because when you look at chicken in the store, most of the labels are going to say no hormones used or contains no hormones, whatever. They're not allowed to put hormones in there anyways. So that's like a trick because you're thinking, oh, this is a really better product for me when they weren't allowed to do it in the first place. Yeah.
But they do put preservatives in a lot of that. I know at least turkey, I can tell the thing, I can taste it and I can see it. And there's organic turkeys that you can buy that have no preservatives, but the basic cheaper ones in the grocery store are filled with preservatives, and it's right on the label.
Well, you have to look at the ingredients part and see if they put, usually they just inject sodium, salt water, and what's the other thing? Gosh.
Sodium phosphate.
Yeah, but it's usually just to make it more tender. And you know how chicken breasts sometimes when you cook them can be so dry because they're so low in fat. That's why I get the dark meat anymore, just because it tastes better. It has more fat in it, so it doesn't dry out as much. But yeah, you have to look at the label and see what they did to it. And the same with turkey. They do that in turkeys at Thanksgiving, Christmas all the time. Yeah.
This might be a dumb question, but I need to know. Are these raised chickens the same ones that lay eggs?
Well, they have hens that lay eggs, and then they have chickens that they raise for the meat. So you have two different chicken populations.
You don't eat the egg-raised chicken? You don't eat chicken that laid eggs?
No.
They get too old.
Yeah, and the meat's not have very good
What do they
quality.
do with it?
Oh,
They just, yeah,
they
Get
just
rid of
killed 4 million.
they probably put it in like dog food. And I'm not a cat person, so I don't know if they put chicken in cat foods, but they probably recycle it into animal feed. So, and then talking about antibiotics, they are allowed to use antibiotics in chicken feed for to decrease the risk of infection, because you know how most hen houses, they're all clustered in there really tightly. They get to move around and stuff, but obviously infection can be higher when you have mass populations living together. But they have to have, and they're not allowed, well, they are allowed to use antibiotics in chickens that lay hens, but what I read online, and I'm not a farmer, but I read that most places in the US do not use antibiotics in hens that lay eggs. And then in the other chickens and in the beef, they have to have a withdrawal period. So they might use really low amount of antibiotics, and then they have to wean the animals off the antibiotics so that by the time they get to slaughter, they really should not have any residual antibiotics left in them. Whether that happens, and we know there's not a ton of meat inspectors, who knows? Okay, so I wanted to show.
So is the egg crisis real?
Yes, because of chickens dying from the bird flu. Yeah, it's not just an inflation thing. We just don't have as many chickens. and it'll take a while to replace them. Okay, so I wanted to just show you a dairy label because I get this question all the time. This was an old dairy label, and so basically the serving size for milk is always a cup, 8 ounces. The calories are going to vary depending on if it's skim milk, 2%, or whole milk. So this is 2% milk. And then you can see 2% has 5 grams of fat in it. It's got 3 grams of saturated fat. Again, in the grand scheme of things, if you're not drinking that much milk, like most people I see, just wet their cereal. If they're having cereal with a little bit of milk, you may not get that much. But if you're like a lot of milk, then this can add up throughout the day. Sodium, not too bad. You still get some sodium from milk because it just comes the way it's made. Great source of potassium. It has a little bit of carbs in there, no fiber, of course, and then it has 11 grams of sugar. And people were like, I can't have milk, it has sugar in it. Well, if we look at now the new labels, you can see over here is that added sugar. Where's the added sugar? It's 0. And it's because sugar has been used interchangeably with glucose, fructose, and galactose. And galactose and glucose are part of the way milk is made by the cow. It's not added sugar. So it's not anything to worry about. It's just part of the product. It's not a processed product where they're adding sugar to it. So when I look at 12 grams of sugar or 11 grams of sugar, I'm not worried about it because it's not the detrimental sugar that they add to products. And I wanted to point that out. Okay, so here's back to my little cereal. That this actually is, if I'm going to eat cereal, this is one of my favorite cereals. It tastes good. And so right away, you can see, I showed you the front of the box, but this sounds pretty good, right? 10 grams of protein from your cereal, or not really. You have to read with milk. Exactly. And so we know if people have more protein at breakfast, it's better, especially as we get older, our body uses it better, and it's a better way of helping maintain our muscle mass as we get older. It's also satiating. If you eat a breakfast and you're trying to not be looking for food 2 hours later, then you want more protein at breakfast time. Now, the caveat here is that you got to have milk. How many people in the room are milk drinkers? 2 people, okay? So again, going back to my example before, the almond milk, if I'm drinking this with almond milk or eating this with almond milk, which is the way I do eat it, I'm not getting that 10 grams of protein. And people are just probably looking at this box and going, oh, 10 grams of protein, this is a great product, I'm going to get it. Okay, so then when I didn't bring the side of the label, but what I wanted to share with you is that if I'm thinking about a serving size, so a serving size is a cup, not too bad, maybe for a glass of milk or a bowl of cereal, and it's 210 calories. Do you guys think that seems pretty reasonable for a cup of cereal? Or does it seem too high? Yeah, it seems pretty reasonable. If I put my 8 ounces of milk on there so I can get my 10 grams of protein, and I'm going to use skim milk, I'm going to add 90 more calories, so I'm up to 300 calories. Does that still sound pretty reasonable? Yeah. Okay, so I'm thinking calories, portion size, okay, I've checked the boxes, that sounds pretty good. 3 grams of fat, sounds pretty good. Saturated fats, less than a gram. No trans fats, 1 gram of poly, 1 gram of micro or mono. So I checked the box for fats, doing good there. Cholesterol, no cholesterol. Sodium 180, low in cholesterol. I look at the carbs and I look at the dietary fiber, 5 grams. So do you guys think 5 grams is pretty good? What's a good goal for women to strive for as far as fiber intake per day? Anybody know? 25 grams. And for men, it's between 30 and 38 grams. At age 51, it drops down to 30 grams from 38. So if I'm keeping in my mind, I'm trying to get 25 grams of fiber. If I'm thinking of 5 grams, is that pretty decent? Not too bad. And how could I increase my fiber intake easily with my breakfast cereal? I could add a little banana. Bananas aren't huge in fiber, they're 2 grams, but I could get up to 7 grams. What else could I do?
Flaxseed.
I could maybe add some flaxseed. Flaxseed actually isn't huge in fiber either, but I could maybe add 3 grams more. So again, now I'm up to 8. What about anybody like raspberries or blackberries? Those are like 5 grams fiber for a serving size, which is about 3/4 of a cup. So now I'm adding more calories, but it's only 60 calories, but I'm adding 5 grams of fiber. So now I'm at 10. That's a pretty good, decent way to get fiber at breakfast. Okay, protein, just from my cereal, I'm getting 6 grams. And if I add a cup of milk, even if it's skim milk, I'm going to get 8 more grams. So I'm at 14 for protein. That's pretty good. And then let's say I added my berries. They're not really high in protein. So if I added 2, then I'm close to 20. That's not bad. Okay, so then if I look at added sugars, now this is where the decision-making process probably needs to come in. Total grams of sugar are 9, and with my milk it's 15. So again, I'm not worried about that the milk is really jacking up the sugar here. But the added sugars is 9 grams. So if we splice that to teaspoons, that's 2 teaspoons of sugar. Let's say out of my 6 grams I get a day. Do you think we could live with that, or do you just think, okay, that's too high in sugar? Depends on what else you're going to eat that day. If you're really not going to eat any sweet kind of stuff the rest of the day, then I think this can easily fit in there. If I can't even think of anything, I'm not a soda drinker. If you're obviously a soda drinker, you're going to get tons more sugar, and this would not be a good idea. But anyways, that's a decision that you would have to make by looking at the label. When I read the ingredients, I look at whole grain oat flour, I look at whole wheat. It has the brown sugar and the sugar. Of course, it has to have some sugar in it. It has malted barley extract, natural flavor, salt, baking soda, and tocopherols. Anybody know what tocopherols are? It's just vitamin E. So I'm not worried about that chemical sounding name. But the malted barley extract, I'm not worried about that. But the natural flavor, there is no definition really for natural flavor. And they don't need to explain to you what it is. And so we don't know what it is that's in there. But it's down near the bottom, and so there's probably not a lot in there, but if you wanted a cleaner product, this would be probably not the best choice for you.
Actually, how big is a gram?
Gram is usually about 29, it's about an ounce. No, wait, an ounce is 30 grams. How big is, I don't know how much a gram is. It probably depends on what it is. Is that what you said? How much it?
Yeah, if I were to identify a quantity as a gram, how much would I see?
I have no idea. I really don't. Because I've never looked at things in terms of just 1 gram, to tell you the truth. I don't know. You could go to the store where
You can Google.
you could weigh things, or you could Google it, yeah. I'm thinking of visually looking at something and measuring it out, but.
Yeah. Did you say that 5 grams of sugar was a teaspoon?
So there's 4 grams in a teaspoon, and so I said that was a smidge. Yeah.
You know, we're talking apples and oranges here, depends on the product.
No, 5 grams would be a smidge over a teaspoon.
Okay.
In terms of, if you had your measuring spoon there, then it would be equal to a little over a teaspoon, like if you had a heaping teaspoon. Okay, so there are definitions for these established by the FDA. So food manufacturers, if you're going to call a product lean, you have to abide by these explanations and definitions. So you can see that they just can't say certain things without meeting these qualifications over here. And luckily, a couple years ago, there was a definition for organic because products were starting to call themselves organic, and there was really no guidelines as far as what actually determines something as being organic. Okay, so when we talk about fat-free or low-fat, these are the definitions for those products, as well as that you can see that low-fat usually is pretty low, 3 grams or less, and reduced fat is a little bit more nebulous, because it just depends on where you're starting from and what the product is you're looking at. So what's something, let's say, like Stouffer's macaroni? No, a better product would be like chicken pot pie from, let's say, Marie Callender's. I know there's usually about 50 grams of saturated or 50 grams of fat in there if you eat the whole thing. And so that's a lot of fat. That's like loaded with fat. So if they advertised it as reduced fat, then you can see that it's going to still be pretty high in fat, even though it's 25% less fat. And then sodium, low sodium, again, that's pretty low. And you just have to decide whether you're going to, that product's going to be tasty or not. And then reduced sodium, again, it's the same as the reduced fat. And then as far as products like this, and a lot more manufacturers are going to catchy marketing statements to grab your attention, and look at the colors here that really jumps out, and you're thinking, oh, well, it has pomegranate and blueberries and apple in it. It obviously has got to be better for me. So whether that's true or not, it's hard to know. You have to go look at the label. But this statement here, where they say help nourishes your brain, maybe it just depends on how processed that product is. If you buy juices that are just natural juice, then those products are just pretty much squeezed and put in the container. But we know that other juices, there's a bunch of other stuff they add to it to make the real juice last longer. And then same with Cheerios, is that maybe you guys have seen this, is that Cheerios are really low in fat. There's like 3 grams of fat in there, or even if that much. And so a lot of people will be drawn to this product because they think cholesterol, getting too much cholesterol in the diet is bad for them. Additionally, if you know very much about cholesterol, is if you have soluble fiber in your GI tract at the same time as the cholesterol, the soluble fiber will bind the cholesterol and decrease the absorption of it. So that sounds like it would be a really good thing. But when you look at the protein amount and the fiber amount, Cheerios is not likely to stay with you very long through the morning. So you just have to decide again if it's going to be a good choice or not. And then this one sounds really good too. So if we start at the top here, always organic. So most of us think, well, of course I'm going to choose organic products. That's healthy for me, right? Talks about what's in the box. So we have our picture here. It does not come with the blueberries. You have to add your own blueberries. But 5 grams of fiber, we just talked about that. That's pretty good. 6 grams of protein, that's also pretty good. And again, it says per serving. So I looked up the serving. The serving is 3/4 of a cup. I measured it out. This is 3/4 of a cup. So are we thinking this is a pretty decent serving for our cereal? Yeah, not too bad. Okay, so then we go down further. Oh, you get 260 calories for our 3/4 of a cup. Then I'm looking at, oh, this sounds good. Pumpkin seed and flax, excellent source of omega-3s, and the type of omega-3 is alpha-linolenic acid. So what does that mean to you?
Healthy.
You think it could be healthy, right? Okay, a couple things is you would have to buy this product to know, and you can kind of see over here, we see the pumpkin seeds, and see these little brown things? Those are the flax seeds. So flax are a good source of omega-3s called alpha-linolenic acid. 2 problems with this product is, one, those flax seeds have to be opened in order to get the fatty acid out of it. If your teeth do not break it open, do you think your GI tract is going to do a good job in letting the alpha-linolenic acid out? No. And then secondly, our body does not do a good job of converting that to the omega-3s that are found like in salmon, EPA and DHA. Those are the ones that are more anti-inflammatory in our body. So depending on our metabolic makeup, how much fat do you have in the picture, depends on whether your body's even going to take that alpha-linolenic acid and convert it to DHA and EPA. So this is a good, tasty product. But don't be drawn in by the fact that you think you're going to get the major health benefits related to the omega-3 fatty acids.
I just bought flaxseed, I think it was yesterday. Now that you say that, it looks like they were all crushed, and the outside is making the inside available, so
Yes. Yeah, if you buy milled flaxseed,
milk.
yeah. And one thing is you want to keep it in the freezer because
Freezer or refrigerator?
I would keep it in the I guess it depends on how fast you're going to use it, because now that you've opened it up and you're going to be able to get the fat out of it, it can become rancid.
Oh.
So if you're not going to use it up in 3 months, I would keep it in the freezer.
And my other question is, as opposed to organic, you see a lot of the word all natural instead of all. I didn't think that meant anything, all natural.
There's no legal definition for all natural.
So it's just misleading.
It's just their marketing tool to make you think that their product is a better option because it's all natural. It could be, but again, you have to spend time of looking at the ingredients on the label and see what really is in there.
So the organic foods held to a certain standard.
Yes, they are.
But
They
all
are.
natural has no standard. Just verbiage.
But I could say, I advertise a banana as all natural. And that's meaningful to me because, of course, the banana, I'm looking at a banana, an actual piece of fruit that is all natural. It just, if it comes in a box, you have to kind of investigate what does that actually mean? What's in that box? And so not all foods that we eat that are all natural come with labels. And so things that come in a container with a label, you have to look at. I mean, now bananas do come with a label because they have the barcode on there. Okay, so anyways, I'm almost out of time, but I wanted to just go over a lot of products now say it's multigrain or it's made with whole grain. So it could be that in order to get my cereal here, I have a little bit of wheat flour, I have a little bit of, I'm making this up, rye flour, I have a little bit of white flour, and I have a little bit of almond flour. And so it is technically made with whole grains. And it is a multi-grain product, but there's no meaning in that whatsoever. So when you're looking at trying to determine if a product is better related to it being a whole grain, look at the label. You want to see whole wheat or stone ground wheat, and look at the fiber, because the fiber is going to be higher if it's a whole wheat product versus multigrain or just made with whole grains. And going back to our Cheerios, I looked at the Cheerios between the normal Cheerios, that box I showed you, and multigrain, and the amount of fiber is exactly the same in both products. So you're not getting any more benefits for your money with the multigrain Cheerios. So and same with made with real fruit. What does that mean? If you end up buying the product, you might see little tiny dots in there, and they're probably real food, but are they giving you enough of a serving size for it to be beneficial is what you have to determine. And then when we look at the how does the calories add up, if you're looking at a higher fat product, so our 12 grams of fat, if we multiply that by 9, that's how they figure out the percentile. And so that just helps you know that you're getting, if the percent of calories from fat is pretty high, then you just can, everybody probably already knows this, is that fat just has twice as many calories. And then alcohol has calories, and sugar, this is just going back to how many grams of sugar are in 1 teaspoon. Because they don't usually tell you how many teaspoons on the label, they'll tell you how many grams of sugar are in there, or added sugar. And so just to go over the new nutrition labels, they hopefully have, we went over that they have bolded certain information. What I would be looking for on the label is, what does the serving size equal? So going back to my stewed tomatoes here, this is a regular can, so it's 14.5 ounces. And I eat stewed tomatoes frequently. And I know if I open this can and I put them in my cup here at their portion size of half a cup, I'm going to end up with half of this can. And this can has 3.5 servings in it. So I don't know how they got 3.5 servings out of this when you actually measure it out in the measuring cup. So that's something that you just have to get familiar with your products, is that if I'm looking at how many servings are in a can, it actually might not equal what if you measured it out, although theoretically it's supposed to.
And those cans used to be 15 ounces, weren't they, a while back ago? And then they drop it down half of.
I haven't noticed about these cans, but some other products definitely, like the ice cream, they're making smaller containers of ice cream to keep the price the same.
And cereal too.
And cereal, yep. And the yogurts, I've noticed the yogurts have changed in size. So to me, the most meaningful info on the label is the serving. How many servings do you get in there? I also look at how much calcium is in different food items. And so if you see a percent on the label as 20% or 30%, and they don't have the milligrams, you can kind of say, okay, there's probably 200 milligrams for a 20% and 300 milligrams for a 30%, to help you interpret that. I think saturated fat is really important because we don't get that much saturated fat a day. And of course, I always look at added sugars and fiber. And once you start reading labels, you just get familiar with what's in different products. Like yogurt, you just have to look at the label. With anything that has fruit in it, it's likely to have a lot of added sugar in it. And then you just have to get used to, well, maybe it's better for me to go to Trader Joe's or Sprouts, where things are more reasonably priced, I personally think, and you just get a better array of healthy products versus the regular grocery stores. And that's all I have. So I guess I'm going to turn it over to Maya to see if there's any questions from our online audience.
So thank you so much, Mary. I do have a couple of questions that have come in. One was about the sodium. So should, and it was more of it was a statement, but also I think a question at the same time. Should your sodium not exceed the calories per serving?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Okay, well, I know when you were talking about sodium early on, she just said it looks like she believed that sodium should not exceed the number of calories, and I'm not sure, maybe it doesn't equate.
Oh, I think
serving.
So say if you're having chicken noodle soup and a cup is just 150 calories, but it has 570 milligrams of sodium in it. I don't think there's any correlation there at all.
Okay.
It's just the information about how much sodium is in that portion size.
Okay, all right. And when you're looking at packaged foods and they have added sugar to them, are there items that we wouldn't think that there's any sugar in them that do? And I know you mentioned mac and cheese earlier had some sugar that was not supposed to be there. Are there other ones that we should look for as well?
Well, they add sugar now. So probably most people in the audience remember the fat craze in the 80s and 90s. We weren't supposed to have any fat whatsoever, right? And so manufacturers had to replace the taste of fat with something else to make it palatable, and it was sugar. And so the fact that their recipes might not be altered on a regular basis, you just have to look on the label and see how much sugar they might be adding to the product because they're trying to make it low fat.
Okay, so there's not like a one not normally think of that comes to mind that would be something to maybe be aware of that you can think of.
Ketchup has sugar.
Okay.
So am I worried about the ketchup and the sugar in the ketchup? It probably just depends on what else I'm eating, but if it's 4th of July and I'm having ice cream with my hot dog, probably not going to worry about it. But it just gives you an idea of how sugar can infiltrate our diet that we're not aware of. And if you're trying to stick to 6 teaspoons or less of added sugar a day, then it's a good idea to get familiar with your normal products that come in a package and just see if there's sugar added to them.
Okay, and I just got some clarification on the sodium. Normally she said that she doesn't want the grams of sodium to exceed, now I'm looking, I was going to say, well, forget it. It's just gone missing on me. So we'll go back to that. My other question is about, I have somebody who's gluten intolerant. What do they need to look for that would be a better product? Because I guess most of the time when they look, there's a lot of high sugars in those products that maybe don't have gluten.
Yeah, because you have to add things to the product to make it taste good, right? And so and it probably also has to do with sugar helps things rise and give it structure. And so gluten products, depending on what they're made with, they tend to be heavier and denser. And so I'm thinking that that's another reason that that they added to it to help with it forming a product. The gluten products just keep evolving all the time, and I think you just either have to think about making it yourself or just keep searching around for new products. And just, I'd probably go to a store where they have a lot of gluten-free products so that you can compare and contrast. Like I know Sprouts has a ton of different products, and I'm not sure, I don't think, I know Trader Joe's obviously has some, but I don't think they have the same variety.
Okay, so Sprouts might have a larger variety to at least check.
Yeah,
Maybe a regular grocery store, a Safeway or a Fry's or something like
yeah,
that.
and I'm just, as far as the grocery stores, I'm most familiar with Safeway and Bashas'. And I know they have some, but it's not huge. And I just know at Sprouts whenever I'm going to grab something and I go, oh, wow, this is gluten-free. No, I don't want
So, okay, so I also, any nutritional buzzwords that we should be aware of when we're out in the grocery store and we see them on those packages. I thought the way you were explaining about the no hormones for chicken was pretty fascinating. I had no idea that you're not even allowed to have that.
I
So,
would
is there
say
any words?
this the same with whole grains and multigrain is those, if you look at breads and cereals, those terms are splashed over so many products and it makes it sound really good. But in essence, you just really have to dive down and look at the label. And I would look at the fiber content and just see what's in there.
Okay, so I guess the last thing I wanted to just cover before we go off is that you do offer nutritional advising through over here at TMC for Seniors with students over at the University of Arizona who are going through your program. We do have a few spots available still that was in our calendar, so there are a few spots open. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. Can you just give just a high level what that looks like, if somebody was interested in an appointment?
Yeah, so it's usually a one-on-one appointment, and I'm always there with the student. And usually we like to keep it to an hour because your time is valuable, and sometimes it's just easy to get off on tangents. So we try to just keep it to an hour. The student will call you ahead of time if you sign up and just get some background information. It takes them a lot longer to get information about what you're actually eating. So we need background information about why do you want to meet with us and what kind of medications you're on, what kind of laboratory data do you know about. So just to get some background information so it can help guide us on other things that we want to maybe talk to you about as far as just what we know that we see that would be helpful for you that you're maybe not doing. So anyways, they would call you, get that information, then they meet with me, they come up with a game plan on what they're going to do during the consultation, and you come into the consultation and they'll get the diet history from you, and then they will compare it to what your goals are. Let's say you come in and say, oh, I really want to try to eat more fiber, and we'll look at what you're doing, and then they'll come up with simple ways on how you could eat more fiber. And then they may also say, oh, I've noticed your diet's really low in calcium. Um, these are some suggestions I have for you regarding this as well. So that's kind of what it looks like.
Okay. And so if somebody is interested, please give us a call in the office. The number is 520 324-1960, and we'd be happy to give you more information. These are all students that are getting ready to graduate, so this is sort of extra experience for them, which is why we like it, and we've gotten such great feedback for it. So I want to thank you so much, Mary, for being here and sharing everything. All about labels. It was great. It was really a good way to sort of really break down what those labels look like and what you really need to start watching for when you're out in the store. So thank you.
Well, thanks for everybody for coming.
So thank you so much for being here today. We hope to see you again for our next talk. We will be having our next talk tomorrow, and that will be the power of sleep on Thursday, January 19th, with David Scholes, who is our neurodiagnostics manager over at Tucson Medical Center at 10 a.m. So please give us a call in the office if you would like to get signed up for that. The phone number is 520-324-1960. Thank you.